The rain began just as the city lights blinked awake, streaking the sidewalks with reflections that shimmered like distant stars. Lila stood by her apartment window, watching droplets chase one another down the glass, and felt an unfamiliar tension coil in her chest. It wasn't the weather. It was the conversation she had earlier with someone she had known for years but never truly understood, Evan. She had always thought of him as steady, reliable, a kind of quiet presence in her life. But tonight, something in his calm voice lingered differently. There was a depth she hadn't noticed before, a softness beneath his usual composure that unsettled and fascinated her all at once. It made her wonder how little she actually knew him, even after all the years of passing smiles and polite exchanges. Earlier, they had met at the cafe near her apartment, a place she frequented more for its solitude than for the coffee. Evan had been there too, waiting as if he had something important to say. Lila remembered the hesitant smile he gave when she arrived, the way his eyes held a question he hadn't dared to speak aloud yet. "I thought maybe we could talk," he had said, voice quiet, measured. Not the usual casual greeting, not the teasing remarks she was used to. There was weight behind his words, a sincerity that tugged at something she hadn't realized she had been ignoring. They found a corner table, and for the first time, the chatter of the cafe seemed to fade, leaving only the hum of their words and the distant rhythm of rain against the windows. Evan leaned back slightly, not impatient or nervous, but present, as though the world had shrunk to just that table and their conversation. "I feel like we've always known each other," he began, "but there are pieces of you I've never really understood." His words didn't feel like judgment. They felt like curiosity, genuine and careful. Lila's hands curled around her coffee cup, feeling warmth she hadn't expected to find in this late-night conversation. She looked at him, really looked, and noticed the subtle lines around his eyes, the way he listened with patience, letting her thoughts flow without interruption. It was different from the surface-level interactions they usually had, and it left her feeling both nervous and strangely relieved. "I guess I've never thought about it that way," she admitted softly. "We've spent so much time around each other that I assumed I knew you completely. Maybe I was wrong." Evan's lips curved into a small, understanding smile. "I think that's human. We see people every day but don't always see them. Sometimes it takes a quiet night, a calm conversation, to really notice." His gaze was steady, not probing, just present, and for reasons she couldn't explain, it stirred something tender inside her. The conversation meandered through childhood memories, small regrets, and hopes she hadn't shared with anyone else. There was an honesty between them that felt fragile yet unbreakable, a balance that Lila hadn't realized she needed until that night. The rain outside thickened, tapping a soft rhythm against the glass, as if it were applauding their slow revelation. Time slipped by unnoticed. The cafe began to empty, and yet neither of them moved to leave. Lila felt a quiet thrill, a mixture of comfort and something she couldn't yet name. She realized she had been holding her breath, not in fear, but in anticipation of discovering a new dimension of someone she thought she already knew. As they finally stood to go, Evan's voice stopped her with gentle insistence. "I'm glad we did this. I see you differently now, and I hope you feel the same." Lila nodded, words failing her in the sudden intimacy of the moment. Her heart beat a little faster, a little louder, and she felt an inexplicable lightness, a new curiosity that hadn't been there before. The rain continued to fall outside, the city lights blurring into shimmering paths. Lila walked home slowly, the memory of Evan's calm, sincere eyes echoing in her mind. For the first time in a long time, she wondered if quiet conversations could change more than just a moment, they could change the way you saw someone entirely. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. She reached her apartment door and paused, hand on the knob, the warmth of the evening fading into the cool night air. She couldn't shake the feeling that something subtle, yet profound, had shifted between them. A question lingered in her mind, fragile and insistent. Could a single calm conversation really alter the way she looked at someone forever? The city seemed quieter now, as though holding its breath along with her, waiting to see what would unfold. The morning after that conversation, Lila woke to sunlight spilling across her bedroom floor. The rain from the night before had left the streets glistening, and the city seemed washed clean, quieter than usual. She lingered by the window, thinking of Evan and the calm certainty in his voice. That single conversation had planted a seed of curiosity she hadn't expected, and it refused to fade with the daylight. She moved through her routine slowly, letting her thoughts drift back to the cafe. She remembered the way he had listened, not just hearing her words, but understanding them. There was a depth to his patience that felt almost revolutionary in her world of rushed greetings and fleeting smiles. For the first time, she questioned how many people she truly noticed and how many she merely passed by. By mid-morning, she found herself walking to the small park near her apartment. She didn't consciously plan to see him, but the thought of him lingered in a gentle, unrelenting way. The park was empty, save for a few joggers and the rustle of trees. She watched a father chasing after his daughter and felt a pang of reflection. How often had she noticed these small, fleeting moments of life around her without really absorbing them? Then, unexpectedly, she saw him. Evan was sitting on a bench, reading a book, seemingly lost in his own world. She froze, unsure whether to wave, approach, or retreat. But something inside her urged her forward. She took a deep breath, smoothing her hair, and walked toward him with careful steps. "Lila," he said, looking up with that calm, familiar smile. It wasn't forced, but warm, the kind of smile that made the air feel lighter. "Didn't expect to see me here?" I didn't, actually," she admitted, taking the empty space beside him on the bench. "I just thought. I don't know, I needed a walk, some quiet." Her fingers brushed against the bench, a small tremor revealing her nerves. He closed the book gently, setting it aside. "Funny how life puts us in the same quiet places, isn't it?" There was a hint of amusement in his voice, but also sincerity. Lila realized she liked how even his humor felt grounded, not performative. It was a rare kind of ease she hadn't found with anyone else. They talked again, at a slower pace than the night before, about nothing and everything. She discovered small details she had never noticed, how he twirled a pen absent-mindedly, how his eyes followed the motion of the leaves, how he sometimes hummed a tune under his breath. Every little thing made him feel closer, yet still somehow untouchable. Lila's mind wandered back to last night, to the way he had spoken about seeing people differently. She realized that she herself was changing, not in some dramatic way, but subtly, an awareness of his presence in her thoughts, in her day, that she hadn't anticipated. She hadn't known she could feel this calm curiosity, this quiet fascination, without the need for words to push the feeling forward. When the conversation drifted to memories of their childhood neighborhoods, she laughed softly at shared anecdotes and marveled at how different their perceptions had been. Evan's recollections were meticulous, tinted with nostalgia, and his ability to observe without judgment fascinated her. She wondered how she had lived alongside someone for so long without seeing these layers. Eventually, the sun climbed higher, and the warmth of the day urged them to part. Lila stood, adjusting her bag. "I should head back," she said reluctantly, feeling an unfamiliar tug of disappointment. Evan nodded, eyes calm, almost reflective. "It's been good seeing you here, like this. I think it's a start of something new, even if we don't fully know it yet." His words lingered, soft but potent, and Lila felt a shiver of quiet recognition. He wasn't just speaking about the park, or the day, but about the way their connection was shifting, imperceptibly, toward something more nuanced. As she walked away, the world felt different. The rustling leaves, the distant laughter of children, even the occasional honk of a car, it all seemed more vivid, more alive. She realized that her perception of Evan, once static and familiar, had become layered and complicated in the most subtle of ways. The calmness he had brought into the night before had not dissipated, it had followed her into the sunlight, a gentle shadow that made her pulse quicken with curiosity. That evening, Lila returned home, but she could not shake the feeling that something had shifted, not dramatically, but irrevocably. Her thoughts kept returning to Evan, to his calm demeanor, to the patient understanding that had left a mark she couldn't ignore. She wondered how many more quiet moments, unnoticed by the rest of the world, had the power to change her entirely. When she finally rested her head on her pillow, she found herself thinking of his words again, and the soft, gentle promise that a single calm conversation could alter perception. The idea hovered in her mind, like the echo of a soft bell in a silent room, leaving her restless and contemplative. She fell asleep wondering if the night would bring another unexpected conversation, one that might deepen the subtle, undeniable shift she felt growing between them. The days that followed were a quiet dance of anticipation for Lila. She went about her routine, but her mind always returned to Evan. Every small sound, every fleeting shadow on the sidewalk, seemed to make her wonder if he was nearby, if another chance to speak would appear. The city around her felt more intimate, more attentive, as though the universe had conspired to make her notice the little details she had overlooked for so long. One evening, the office where she worked felt heavier than usual. The fluorescent lights flickered, echoing the rhythm of her thoughts, and she found herself staring out of the window, wishing for the calm of a familiar voice. She didn't know why she expected it, or why the memory of his presence brought her comfort, but it did. His calmness was a kind of anchor she hadn't realized she needed. Her phone buzzed, breaking the reverie. A message from an unknown number made her heart skip. "Meet me at the park bench near the fountain." "I'll wait. Evan." A rush of warmth and surprise flooded her, along with a nervous flutter she hadn't expected. She quickly changed into something casual, her mind buzzing with anticipation. Walking through the city streets, she thought about the first time they had shared a long, meaningful conversation and how different the world felt afterward. The rain, the quiet cafe, his attentive presence, all of it seemed like a prologue to something larger, something unspoken. The park was nearly empty when she arrived, the fountain casting a silver glow in the fading sunlight. Evan was there, sitting as though he had been waiting for hours, though the calmness of his posture suggested otherwise. When he saw her, his eyes softened, and he gestured to the empty space beside him. "Lila," he said gently, "I'm glad you came." His voice, steady and patient, felt like the first warm breeze of spring after a long winter. She smiled, feeling a subtle tension release from her shoulders. They walked slowly along the winding paths of the park, the conversation flowing naturally, unforced. Evan spoke of things he rarely shared, his dreams, his worries, the small triumphs and failures that shaped him. Lila listened, realizing again how much of a mystery he still was, how much depth lay beneath the calm exterior she had always admired but never fully seen. "What I realized," he said quietly, "is that moments like these, quiet and unremarkable to everyone else, shape how we see the people we care about. And sometimes, all it takes is noticing." His words struck a chord deep within her. She had always thought that knowing someone meant seeing the obvious, but he was teaching her that it was the subtleties that mattered most. She found herself laughing softly at one of his anecdotes, a story about a forgotten childhood promise. The sound surprised her, light and free, carrying a warmth she hadn't expected to feel. Evan's smile mirrored her own, a reflection that felt comforting yet electrifying in its simplicity. As the sky darkened and streetlights flickered on, casting golden hues over the park, they paused by a small wooden bridge. Lila leaned lightly against the railing, watching the gentle ripples of the water below. Evan stood beside her, silent, yet somehow entirely present. "You know," he said after a moment, "there's something about seeing the world with someone who notices the quiet moments. It changes how you feel about everything, even people you thought you knew." His gaze found hers, calm but intense, and she felt a flutter she couldn't quite name. For a long time, neither spoke, the silence comfortable, not awkward. It was the kind of silence that carried meaning, filled with the echoes of shared understanding and unspoken recognition. Lila realized she had been craving this, for connection without pretense, for depth without pressure. When they finally turned to leave, the park seemed transformed. Shadows danced differently, colors felt richer, and the city beyond the park's edge no longer seemed overwhelming. Every small sound, the rustle of leaves, distant footsteps, the hum of traffic, was a reminder that she had experienced something rare, something that lingered gently in the spaces between words. As Lila walked home, the night air cool against her skin, she felt an unexpected sense of anticipation. The calmness Evan carried wasn't just a trait, it was a presence that had quietly reshaped her perception of him, and perhaps of herself as well. She wondered if he realized the depth of influence his quiet honesty had on her. When she reached her apartment, she paused at the doorway, feeling a tender mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. The city's lights shimmered in the distance, and she knew that her thoughts of Evan wouldn't fade with sleep. Something subtle, yet powerful, had shifted between them, and she was eager yet hesitant to see what the next encounter would reveal. The weekend arrived with a soft, golden light that spilled into Lila's apartment. She moved slowly, savoring the quiet, letting her thoughts drift to Evan. Their conversations had begun to shape the rhythm of her days. Even simple errands felt lighter, as though she carried a warmth inside that only his presence could spark. Saturday morning found her in the little bookstore she often visited. Rows of worn spines and the faint scent of paper offered a kind of calm she adored. As she wandered the aisles, she saw him, Evan, leaning casually against the doorway of the poetry section, a book open in his hands. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them blurred. "You're persistent," Lila teased softly, feeling her pulse quicken. "Curiosity is a good habit," he replied, closing the book and stepping aside so she could browse. His calmness had a way of settling her, yet it also made her notice every subtle movement, every nuance of expression, as though she were seeing him in high definition for the first time. They walked together through the aisles, sharing thoughts on favorite authors, laughing at the oddities of old poetry books, and occasionally falling silent, letting the quiet speak volumes. Lila found herself noticing the little details, the way his fingers lingered on the spines, the soft intonation of his voice, the slight tilt of his head when he considered a line of verse. She realized with a quiet thrill that she had been blind to these moments before, dismissing him as simply familiar. After a while, they stepped outside, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Lila felt a comfortable ease settle between them, yet a subtle tension hovered, an awareness of something changing, quietly, within her. She wondered how a man she had known for years could continue to reveal himself in ways that made her heart lift unexpectedly. They paused at a small cafe, deciding to take a break. The conversation turned to memories of their early days of friendship, the awkward introductions, the shared laughter over trivial misunderstandings. Evan's recollections were precise, detailed, and filled with warmth. Lila realized she had been seeing him through a shallow lens for too long, overlooking the intricacies that made him who he was. "I think," he said softly, "that people are like books. You can skim the pages, know the chapter titles, and still miss the story. It takes patience to really read someone." She nodded, smiling, feeling the truth of his words settle deep within her. She had been skimming the pages of his life for years, comfortable with familiarity, yet never truly absorbing the narrative. And now, with these quiet, deliberate conversations, she felt herself reading him in a way she hadn't imagined possible. As evening approached, they walked along the riverbank, watching the sun lower itself in a gentle blaze of orange and pink. The reflections of the city lights began to dance on the water, and Lila felt a quiet thrill at how serene everything seemed. Even the passing strangers felt less intrusive, less jarring. It was as though the calm that Evan carried had become a lens through which she now viewed the world. "I don't think I've ever seen you like this," Lila admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "Not just here, but alive in all these little details." Evan's eyes softened, and he offered a small smile. "And I've noticed you noticing. That's the beautiful part. It's not just seeing, it's being present, really present, together in these moments." She felt her chest swell with a quiet, unfamiliar emotion, a mixture of admiration and something that teetered on awe. She had always known him as a steady presence, but tonight, the layers of patience, empathy, and gentle curiosity revealed a man who could leave her completely captivated without even trying. Night fell fully as they reluctantly parted near her apartment building. Lila lingered, hesitant to step inside, to let go of the calm, profound connection they had shared all day. Even after all these encounters, she realized she couldn't predict what she might feel next, and that uncertainty thrilled and unsettled her in equal measure. The city lights flickered softly, and she breathed in the cool night air, feeling the echo of Evan's words and his presence lingering in the spaces around her. Something delicate, fragile, and yet unmistakably significant had shifted, and she knew their story wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. As she finally entered her apartment, she felt a quiet, lingering anticipation, an awareness that their next conversation might reveal even more, deepening the impression that one calm, heartfelt dialogue could change the way she perceived someone entirely. The night was still, but her thoughts raced with possibilities she couldn't yet name. The following week passed in a haze of subtle anticipation for Lila. Each day felt slightly brighter, her thoughts lingering more on Evan than she had ever expected. She found herself smiling at random moments, recalling the quiet conversations they had shared, and the soft, unspoken understanding that seemed to grow between them. It was no longer just curiosity, it was an awareness of something gentle but undeniable. That Friday evening, the city seemed to hum with life. Lila left work a little early, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the familiar park bench near the fountain. Her steps were light, her heart quietly fluttering, as though it had been waiting for this very night. She reached the park to find Evan already there, leaning against the fountain's edge, a serene expression on his face. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carrying the calm confidence she had grown to rely on. "Hi," she replied, settling beside him. The fountain splashed gently, the water catching the reflection of the lamplight like tiny sparks of gold. Lila realized that over the past few days, the quiet comfort he brought had become almost a necessity. Even the simplest moments felt different with him present, as though they were seeing the world with new eyes. They walked slowly along the river path, the conversation meandering as it always did. Lila shared small thoughts about her week, laughing quietly at minor frustrations and celebrations, and Evan listened with that same unwavering patience. It was in his silence, the way he absorbed her words without judgment, that she felt most noticed, most understood. "I've been thinking," he said after a while, his gaze distant yet gentle, "about how moments can change everything without us even realizing it. How one calm conversation, one quiet night, can alter how we see someone, how we feel about them, sometimes forever." Lila's chest tightened with recognition. She thought of the first night at the cafe, the way he had spoken with clarity and patience, making her feel seen in ways she hadn't known she could. She nodded slowly, words failing her for the first time in days. "Exactly," she whispered, almost to herself, "it's like, everything shifts, but subtly. And you don't even notice it until it's already happened." Evan turned to her, his eyes steady and thoughtful. "I think that's the beauty of it. Life is full of these quiet moments, these small revelations. And sometimes, all it takes is noticing the right one at the right time." They paused on a small wooden bridge overlooking the gently flowing river. The lamplight reflected off the water, casting a warm glow around them. Lila felt the weight of the evening settle softly, a mixture of comfort and something deeper, an awareness that the quiet bond they had cultivated was something rare and precious. "I've realized," she said finally, her voice calm but layered with emotion, "that it's not just about seeing someone differently. It's about what you do with that new understanding, how it shapes the way you carry them in your thoughts, your days." Evan listened, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "And sometimes, it shapes the way they carry you too," he said softly. The words settled between them like a gentle promise, and Lila felt her heart respond in kind. She had expected calm, patient companionship, but the depth of connection, the slow unfolding of understanding, had exceeded her own imagination. For years, she had thought she knew Evan, yet each conversation, each quiet observation, had unveiled layers she hadn't anticipated. As they walked back toward the park's entrance, the night air cool but comforting, Lila realized that the shift within her wasn't sudden or dramatic, it was a quiet evolution, a subtle yet profound awareness that he mattered in ways that went beyond familiarity. And for the first time, she allowed herself to fully appreciate the patience, the gentleness, and the presence that had quietly altered her perception from that very first night. When they reached the street outside her apartment building, neither moved to part immediately. The city lights glimmered softly, the distant hum of evening traffic underscoring the serene moment. Lila felt a profound sense of gratitude not just for Evan, but for the way he had allowed their shared moments to linger, to grow, and to deepen. "I'm glad we had that conversation," she said softly, her gaze holding his. "It changed everything for me. More than I thought it could." Evan nodded, the calmness in his eyes reflecting the same understanding she felt. "And I'm glad too. Some conversations don't just pass, they stay, quietly shaping everything after." Lila smiled, feeling a gentle warmth spread through her chest. She knew that the quiet, thoughtful bond they had nurtured wasn't fleeting. It was enduring, a subtle transformation that had altered how she saw him, and how she would carry him in her heart from that night on. The city around them felt still, but not empty. It hummed with the gentle echoes of their shared understanding, of quiet recognition, and of a connection that had begun with one calm conversation and had blossomed into something quietly remarkable. And in that moment, Lila realized that some shifts are so soft, so understated, yet they leave traces that last forever.